Behind the scene with David Bedein. Here in Jerusalem, people are wondering, what is the connection between the Russian-Ukrainian war and the Russian involvement in the Middle East at this time? Well, under the guidance of the KGB, that's Russian intelligence, the idea of the Arab refugees as a distinct people took place. Yes, the KGB generated a storyline that now often is taken as factual. The KGB created 4 different myths, which are very important to understand. 1, the PLO from its start expressed the will of the Arabs living in the geographic region of Palestine rather than the will of Moscow to create divisions and overthrow democracy. 2, Palestine is not just the name of a geographic region, but the home for a distinct and indigenous people, the Palestinian Arabs. Its Jewish citizens are colonizers, according to the KGB, from some unidentified foreign country. 3, Israel practices apartheid, in which the Arab citizens of Israel are prevented from advancing. And 4, Arab poverty in any of the territories controlled by Arabs is due to Israel, rather than to the Arabs who currently control Palestine, namely Hamas and the PLO. Now, there's a very important study that was done by an institute called Informing Science, the International Journal of Emergency Transdiscipline. Now, this is called the KGB and Anti-Israel Propaganda, which appears on our website today, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Now, the Russians are getting ready for something vis-a-vis Israel and the Palestinian Arabs. How do we know? The intelligence of the PLO, the leaders of the intelligence division of the PLO, have been in Moscow for the last 2 weeks, led by Mustafa Barghouti, who is the most, veteran person involved in PLO. We can call it counterintelligence. And these are the people who fomented the Intifada back in 1987. That's the rebellion of the Arabs against Israeli rule in 1987. And they are determined to continue that role. And we're seeing now what may be an insurrection of the Palestinian Arabs in Israel. And we think very well, all indications from Israeli intelligence sources are that they will be fomenting a rebellion with the support of Moscow as Moscow looks to create an image which is good for itself. The fact that they're fighting against Israel and for what they think is an indigenous people, the Palestinian Arabs, and this is something very important because it's since 1967, it is the Russians who created the aura around the PLO as if it's a liberation movement, and we can expect more Russian involvement with what's happening in Israel. Remember, the Russians, together with the Americans, are the guarantors of the peace process, of the Oslo peace process, which began back in 1993. From the Russian point of view, that means that Israel has to withdraw from everything it took in the 1967 war, and also recognize what they call the right of return, the right of return for Palestinian Arabs to take back Jerusalem, and also everything they lost in 67 and 48, 67 and 48. And this is a very important direction where things are going in terms of the propaganda, in terms of the atmosphere here. And the people who are pushing this are none other than the Russians. When I was a kid, there was a movie called The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. It's no joke. It's something very serious. And the influence of the Russians on the current situation is something to be factored in to the peace process and to everything going on. Whether or not all of the brass of Israeli intelligence are aware of it is not something I know. I can tell you that on the ground, we see the Palestinians gathering for what may be a major insurrection, not only in terms of the Palestinian Arab community, but also in terms of the Israeli Arab community. And in places like Lod, Ramla, Jaffa, Akko, we see an organization and also an armed rebellion which is being prepared in the UNRWA camps, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency camps. Again, the idea that the Russians pushed through Russian intelligence over the years was that this is not just a bunch of refugees, but actually a national movement with a base that cannot be challenged. This is David Bedein reporting. Behind the Scene with David Bedein, and make sure to look at our website today, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, to get more insight into what's happening, into the Hamas takeover of the refugee camps, into the curriculum for war, which is being promulgated, and you'll get some insight into what is actually happening. Behind the Scene with David Bedein. Thank you.